But I think if you approach it this way, it allows you to better understand that like no workflow you put in place today is going to be the same 3 months from now, and that's okay. And you're going to learn a lot from that workflow, whatever it's built on. And that actually puts you in a much better position to recognize when a new update will actually solve a problem for you better, right? Because it's not until you're in it that you really understand, wow, Claude Cowork is a huge unlock. Or there are plenty of people who are like, I work on a PC. This is not relevant to me because currently Claude Cowork is not available on PCs. So like, you know, I think that's the thing is just distinguishing between what is the business challenge we're solving for and what is the pain we're experiencing now and what is the latest and greatest.
You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy.
And you're kicking off,
my
right?
God.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, there's this running joke at MPL that ever since I had a kid, I all of a sudden have tech difficulties every day. And Steven was just telling Diane about this. And literally 5 seconds later, I clicked the wrong button. And so here we are. Welcome to the show, Diane. Hopefully you're having a great week so far.
Yeah, I am, and even better now.
It's always good to get a little laugh as we're hitting record. We start every episode with something called Good News Stories. It could be something work-related. It could be personal, anything that's coming to mind for you. And we like for our guests to go first. So if you have something, we would love for you to go.
Yeah, I think my good news story is this is work, but it's also personal, is we are onboarding a new facilitator to Clarinet this week. And I'm very excited to work with someone new, get someone new in the mix, but it's also very personal because as you both know, as working parents, if someone else isn't doing it, you're doing it. So I'm very excited to have an even bigger squad to kind of carry out our mission. So that's my great news of the week.
You want to give them a shout out? Who's the new facilitator?
Yeah, the new facilitator's name is Gabriel. And I also want to shout out my colleague Tara Nouveau, who was the one who found him and shepherded him into the Clarinet fold.
Well, if Gabriel's listening, welcome to the team. That's exciting. And I see Steven still typing in our internal doc, so I can go next. So the good news is that we've locked in our travel plans for the next couple of months. Like we have like a general calendar for the next 12 months, but some of the dates weren't like officially locked in. And as of this week, they're locked in. So we are for sure going to Vegas for Transform. I believe that's like end of March. And by the way, for people listening, if you want to go to Transform, they actually gave us one free pass to give away to listeners. And so if you're interested,
Amazing.
Shoot me a DM. This is Daniel talking. I know people get us confused sometimes, and I can get you hooked up. I think the plan will be to give it to the first person who reaches out. And so, yeah, shoot me a DM as quickly as possible. And then we locked in Toronto. So we're going to be in Toronto on April 16th. Well, we'll probably get there like a day or two early, but our event is going to be on April 16th. And as of this morning, both of our wives and our babies have expressed interest in joining. Well, maybe not the babies, but they're going to be there. And
Joaquin, what are you talking about? He's like, so excited to come
"Please
to an
take
HR
me."
conference.
There's nothing a baby loves more than air travel. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I still haven't experimented, or we haven't. Lena hasn't been on her first flight, and she'll be about 10 months when that comes around. So we'll see. I don't know. A little nervous. Steven, what do you got?
All right. Well, my good news today is that I am not the one having tech issues. That it's Daniel, and the universe is paying him back for, years of trolling me. Just kidding. That is good news that it isn't just me, but my actual good news is, so I do have a baby boy, Joaquin. He is Wow, 7 weeks old, going on 8 weeks old. But I also have 2 teenage daughters, one of which, my youngest daughter, happy belated birthday, Cora. She turned 14 just like last Friday. And my oldest daughter, Astrid, she turns 16 next month. So she's 15. And I'll try to say this as quickly as possible so I don't go on a long rant. But essentially, my good news is that Astrid is really good at soccer, and she is on a national team for her club, meaning we travel all over the state, out of state. And she just got promoted to that team this year, and she didn't make her varsity team. So she's a sophomore, which, I mean, that's not uncommon that the sophomore doesn't make a varsity team, but she just had these high expectations because she's performing at a very high level. And, you know, that's hard for teenagers. So I gave her some tough feedback a few weeks ago because I saw her not showing up. That means she plays for JVA and is a backup for varsity. I gave her some feedback a few weeks ago because it looked like she just wasn't really trying for JVA. Like that wasn't really important to her. At the same time, she wasn't getting any play time for varsity. And in my head, like, this is like worst case scenario. Like, this is what you don't want to be doing. So it's like, okay, how do I translate that and make a 16, 15-year-old understand that? And so I gave her some feedback. I kept it brief. And last night at the game, I saw her, she actioned the feedback. And the feedback was simple. Leave it all on the field. Like, do your best and do everything you can to excel for your team. She had 2 goals and 3 assists. And one of the goals was a header. The other goal was be a leader. Like, if you are personally you could be playing up, but you're being kept on another team, maybe that's like an opportunity for you. And like 20 minutes in, there was an injury. The team wasn't really playing the style that they should have been playing. And she called the group together. I took a video of it, called the group together, had a talk with them, and kind of level set. And that's a super proud dad moment. Like, your wins, I feel like, come fewer and far between the older your kids get. That was a huge win last night. So that's my good news. And sorry for it being so long today.
No, it sounds like she was tapping into her inner Steven Huerta.
Maybe.
That's awesome.
The one thing I know is to not brand it that way, because then she won't do it.
She'll do the opposite. Yeah. Well, Diane, I had the pleasure of hearing a little bit about your story a few weeks ago, or maybe it was like a month ago. Honestly, time's flying. It's hard to remember when we spoke, but I loved hearing your story, and I was hoping that you could share that same story with our audience. Tell us a little bit about your career and how that all led you to Clarinet. Lately, the idea of backup care has been hitting close to home for us. Steven's navigating life with a newborn, and I'm in the thick of toddler life, which means sick days, last-minute gaps, and the moments where our childcare plans fall apart at like literally the worst possible times. It's times like these when people realize very, very quickly whether their backup care benefit actually works or just looks good on paper. And that's the problem that a lot of employers are running into right now. Traditional backup care just wasn't built for how families live and work today. If you do offer it as a benefit, I have a good feeling that you've heard complaints like, it's not reliable, it's too limited, I can't get through the wait list, my kid freaking hates it, or honestly, it just doesn't help when we actually need it. That's why more companies are switching to Wealthy backup care. Wealthy meets families where they are. Instead of forcing employees into limited networks or one-size-fits-all care options, Wealthy helps them find the right backup care for kids, adult dependents, and even pets, either through a vetted provider network or by leaning on a Wealthy expert who handles the searching and booking for them. For employees, it's super flexible. For employers, it's cost-efficient and predictable. It's pay-as-you-go, so you only pay for the care days that your employees actually use. And for all of the in-person teams out there, Wealthy even offers affordable on-site and near-site backup care, including dedicated care rooms, which are super clutch and a total game changer. Backup care has changed a lot, and this is what it should look like. If you want to learn more, head to wealthy.com/MPL, and you can get a personalized geo access report. That's wealthy.com/MPL.
Yeah, happy to. Hopefully it will be as delightful as you remember. So my background is in organizational development and behavior change. It has been kind of a long and windy road, like I think many of us in the people space. It's not like a major in college, or at least it was not at my university. So like it didn't occur to me that like learning and development or leadership or org change like was something that you could really do. So I actually started my career abroad. I moved to the Czech Republic right after college to teach English. I was teaching kind of business English and business skills. And then I worked in Shanghai for a couple of years doing learning and development, recruiting, things like that, kind of getting deeper and deeper into the kind of people side of things. And then moved to New York, got involved in kind of the startup Silicon Alley scene. I don't know if they still call it that, but they did at the time. It was very hip. Yeah, so got really involved in that. And I mean, all of this then led me to kind of one of the longer stints in my career, which was working for a company called Life Labs Learning, which many of your listeners might know about. I was one of the early employees, head of facilitation, head of product there, which was a wild ride. Being a leader of a leadership development company, teaching teachers who teach leaders is all many layers of the onion there, a real pressure cooker experience. And how this all led me to AI and Clarinet, because Clarinet, we help organizations adopt AI, was I live in the Bay Area. You literally cannot drive down the street without AI being in your face. That was as true 3 years ago as it was today, or as it is today. And yeah, I kind of was intrigued and also really freaked out, right? I was like, what is this thing? What is it going to mean? What is it going to do? And I decided that I really wanted to learn more about it so that I could develop my own opinion. And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh my gosh, one, this is really cool. This is really helpful. My first AI use case ever was crafting a job description. And I was like, I am never doing this by hand again. If you know, you know. If you've written a million job descriptions, like, whew, can it be tedious? So I was like, wow, this is technology that actually lightens my load. And then literally the same thought in my head was, this is not going to be intuitive for people to use. And because in part, it's so much like delegating to humans, and all of my work with leaders over the years has shown me just how much of a real skill set that is. Some people are very good at it naturally, but most of us aren't. And so the idea of, all right, how do we change our behavior to take advantage of this new technology? How do we structure our organizations to, again, take advantage of this technology while also keeping the humans kind of front and center? And, how do we actually get all of our grand plans done? So that's what led me to found Clarinet. And that's basically what we do is we help organizations learn about AI, build some of their AI, and scale AI adoption through functions, teams, and orgs. So, yeah.
Well, you stole my thunder for the next question, was to describe how you would describe Clarinet to a stranger. So I'm going to ask a bonus question. So
I'm sorry, I worked one bullet point ahead.
No, I love it. Efficiency. What's one surprising takeaway that you've had, like just given your customer their challenges and problem? And there are a lot of challenges, honestly, right now. What's the most unexpected kind of finding that you've had from engaging with customers and hearing their problems? Like, what's something you can share with us that was a bit of a blind spot for you?
Yeah, there are a few that come to mind. One is, these are not meant to be spicy or shady takes, because the reality is we all have blind spots. One is there is absolutely an assumption that the tech side of organization has it all figured out when it comes to AI, and that is often very much not the case. And which is also interesting because in some ways, AI is the most sophisticated on kind of the software engineering side. So it's kind of, there's this disconnect of, because software engineers can kind of talk the talk a little bit more, they're more fluent in these concepts, that they're actually a lot further along in the learning. And that's true in many cases, but it is not universally true. So that is one kind of surprise and blind spot, that I think a lot of our clients make, and we've made as well, right? Going in, kind of making big assumptions about like how sophisticated this side of the org will be, while the other one's catching up, and oftentimes it's the opposite. So that's one big surprise when it comes to AI. The other thing is Again, it's the gap between knowledge and application. Some of the people I know who are kind of really savvy about like what the tech can do also have not necessarily been able to implement nearly as much as they want to. So there is a real gap between kind of understanding and having the plans and actually like putting hands on keys and making the changes, and a lot of that is just like time and bandwidth constraints. But I think that's the other thing. So I guess the TLDR is talking the talk and walking the walk. Like so many things in life are two separate and distinct things that often go together, but we shouldn't make assumptions.
I love that bonus question, Stephen. And yeah, I would make the same assumption that tech teams just like have it all figured out. But having a wife that is in a very technical role, she's an ML engineer. I know firsthand that that's not the case. And so the other day, we were joking, like we made it 23 minutes into an episode without talking about AI. I looked at the timestamp. I think we made it like 11 minutes today or like 10 minutes. So we did okay, but I get it. Like I know why we're talking about AI in almost every episode that we have. Like one, we've gone through this one-way door with AI and we're not going back. I feel like we had a similar moment a few years ago with distributed work. Two, there are just like more tools out there than we ever could have imagined. And surprisingly, they're pretty accessible for the most part, as long as, you set aside some time and, you go in there and you tinker. Like most non-technical people can figure it out. And three, like every company is motivated to figure out AI. Every CEO, every CPO, it's all we can talk about. And to your point, there's still this gap between like walking the walk and talking the talk. And so I'm just curious, like, let's start there. Why do you think so many companies and so many teams are still stuck?
Yes, absolutely. So I often say, we're in a world of AI abundance. Why does it still feel so hard? It feels like it shouldn't be. And I think some of it honestly is a little bit of the way that how AI has come into our lives, which is that it was very much a ChatGPT kind of launched to the world. And it was kind of a DIY from the beginning, right? It was like, jump into the tool, figure it out, same thing like vibe coding, jump in, figure it out. And I think at this point, part of the challenge is that certainly you can do a lot, to your point, Danielle, of like you can DIY a tremendous amount, but it's kind of like the Pinterest or the Instagram problem, which is like, you're looking at, just because you see examples of people like beautifully DIYing these workflows in 30 seconds on a LinkedIn video, on the back end there's a lot going on and there's a lot more friction and so on. So I mean, I think like the analogy we often use is like, sure, like you could learn to like renovate your house on YouTube, but you don't have time to renovate when your house is on fire. And so I think like oftentimes, especially in a lot of the businesses we work with, which are like startups, scale ups, business as usual there is no business as usual. So then you're trying to layer on this new technology, this new capability, this new set of systems, and there just isn't the key ingredients that you need for AI to work really well just aren't there. But because of the way AI has been kind of marketed to us as like, it's this like miracle tool, it's really hard to see the disconnect. And so it's kind of this constant feeling. I talk to so many leaders who every single one of them is like, I feel so behind. I feel like I'm letting everyone down because I haven't like implemented stuff. And I'm like, look, you're not alone. The reality is, in order, particularly for some of like the big, sexy, standardized use cases, what you really need is you need kind of some standardized process. AI needs to have access to kind of good data. That doesn't necessarily mean the data has to be well organized, but it needs to be clean, as in like it can't be like a billion duplicates. And then the challenge itself has to be kind of consistent enough, and the solution needs to be consistent enough that it makes sense to invest in building a process around it. And if you've ever been in a startup and scale up, you can count on one hand how many areas of a business have that like trifecta of like clear process, standardized data, consistency of output, and frequency. So I think that's why a lot of it does feel so tough, because there's also, people are comparing themselves they're comparing outcomes, but they're not comparing inputs. And so if you can start to better understand what is the input that's required to get that output, then it's easier to start to see, oh, okay, like that's really cool, but we're not there yet, right?
So much of what you just shared really resonated with me. The strange thing is, I would imagine a lot of the people you're working with are at the very beginning of their journey, but I would not describe myself at the beginning of the AI journey, like Stephen Huerta's AI journey. And if you follow me, you listen to this podcast, you know that's you know why I say that, because I've been obsessed for a very long time. But even going on like a 3-week paternity leave, so baby Joaquin joins us on December 22nd. And I think whatever, it was like the 12th, January 12th, that I was like back at work. And, you know, maybe another week or two before like my head was above water and I was actually like fully back into the swing of things. So that's what, like 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks. In that time frame, Anthropic launches Claude Cowork. There are all these GPT releases. And I'm like, how in the hell am I behind? Like I feel like I'm a pretty advanced user of AI and the way I think of it and like what I build. And I feel like I'm behind. And that just, I feel that gives me a lot of empathy. It gives me a lot of empathy for the people that are at the very, very beginning. And I think it was Terry, you gave her a shout out earlier on your team. She was at MPL Live Austin, and she had one of the most quotable moments, for me at least, moments that I've quoted. And that is, and I can't remember all of them, but there's like different profiles that you've identified. So there's like fear of missing out, fear of getting it wrong. And it was, I forget what it was. It was like fear of moving forward. And so that coupled with everything else, like I just feel like it's tough. It must be really tough to kind of get out of the rut and to get things moving. The other thing that you mentioned, well, not mentioned, that you touched on that I want to dig into before we move on to my next question is the typical use cases. So what are those today? So like,
Stephen, real quick, I'm just curious, like as she was walking us through like the trifecta of what you need for a good use case, I'm curious, like how much of that you've been doing this for our company. You went through the process of reviewing all the transcripts, of looking at all the processes, and like figuring out like the good use cases. Is this pretty similar to what you were looking at, like unintentionally or maybe intentionally?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think of the trifecta, the hardest one is the last one, consistent. It needs to be consistent enough. So like output and frequency, and then I would say standardized processes. Like we have for HR though, like these are all real. Like we're a marketing media business. So a lot of what I am going to be focusing our next phase of work is, and that's really moving to agentic workflows for all of our content creation. That is pretty standard. You record a podcast like this recording right now, there's going to be output, and that output is very similar to the last one we did and the one before that. And essentially all of the podcasts that we've ever recorded, with the exception of moving from like Zoom to Riverside, like our data is pretty consistent. That's not the case with HR. With human, when you're talking people data, it's notorious for being not great to work with. So, but for me, it's like, then you get over that hurdle, then it has to be standardized, right? So it has to be done a repeatable way. And then also the output needs to be consistently the same. That just like seems impossible, honestly.
Hey everyone, really quick. Because the frameworks we're talking about with Diane today are so practical and useful for AI adoption, we've created a downloadable PDF that includes all of the good stuff. From the 5 frictions framework, to the trifecta test for finding good AI use cases, to examples for each of the 5 frictions. And I personally think every team should go through each of these frameworks. So if you want the PDF, the link is in the description below. And now, back to the show.
There are 2 things that you shared, and I just want to share in case it helps some of your listeners. To your point of like feeling behind, right? Of like, I took my eye off the ball for 2 seconds and now the ball is way in front of me and I feel like I can never catch up. One thing that is very, very clear after having done this, which we do work with a lot of people earlier in the AI journey. We also work with a lot of people who are quite far along. So it's not just the beginners that we're working with. And part of the reason is that, to your point of like, oh, but the tech changes so fast, there's a difference between the tech that solves your problem and solves your pain and the latest tech, right? And like so often chasing the latest and greatest is the thing that we see people focus on. And you're kind of like, yeah, but like, like 3 versions ago can help you now. So it's kind of like the use case that's implemented is better than the use case that is, yet to come or cutting edge. And I think one of the things that I would just say is like, for those, we call it like FOJI, like fear of jumping in. For those of you, oftentimes the fear of jumping in is the feeling of like, oh, am I going to pick the wrong tool? Or like, oh, what if I do it and I'm going to need to redo it? I think the mindset shift that I found helpful, both with my clients, but also for us internally at Clarinet, because I mean, we're in the soup too, is if you think of AI implementation more like the Japanese concept of Kaizen, right? Continuous process improvement, right? So the idea is it's not AI implementation. It is, all right, what are we doing to continually optimize our workflows? And sometimes that involves technology. Sometimes that involves not technology, right? Standardizing process or making different decisions or those types of things. But I think if you approach it this way, it allows you to better understand that like no workflow you put in place today is going to be the same 3 months from now. And that's okay. And you're going to learn a lot from that workflow, whatever it's built on. And that actually puts you in a much better position to recognize when a new update will actually solve a problem for you better, right? Because it's not until you're in it that you really understand like, wow, Claude Cowork is a huge unlock. Or there are plenty of people who are like, I work on a PC. This is not relevant to me because currently Claude Cowork is not available on PCs. So like, I think that's the thing is just distinguishing between what is the business challenge we're solving for and what is the pain we're experiencing now and what is the latest and greatest. Sometimes those two things line up, but sometimes you got some time, right? Like you can always upgrade. So yeah.
That's such great advice. Steven's laughing because he's literally going to have to get a new laptop.
Literally, I'm going after this recording to the Apple Store to get a new laptop because I'm behind on my sprint of some initial deliverables that I need to get done. But so let's keep it moving because there's so much that you have to share. And so let's talk about picking the wrong use case. Because what I'm hearing from you is there's value in the learning. Like, don't discredit that even if you get it wrong, like there really is no getting it wrong because just by jumping in and choosing something to work on, a use case that meets the criteria as closely as possible. Maybe it's not even perfect, just like something that you know is going to deliver value to the team. So maybe you're focusing on like time saving, like something that's just like a huge time suck for everyone. And just by jumping in, choosing a stack to work in, maybe it's just like an LLM, you keep it simple, you appease your IT, everyone's happy, that there's going to be value in that you are going to learn a tremendous amount about yourself and about the technology just by going through that. And so let's talk about like getting it wrong though, because I still feel like even though you're saying that, like, I don't know, that the high D in me or like the personality trait, whatever that is, like that brings caution is like, I don't know if that's real. It sounds great on this podcast. So in our prep call, you shared a story about an internal proposal generator that worked for a while until it didn't. Like, let's use an internal example. So like walk us through like what happened and, how the team had to adjust to it.
Absolutely. And I first want to say like, there's a difference between going with something is going to change and getting it wrong. Right. To me, like, and I think that's my whole point about Kaizen is like, just because you need to upgrade eventually doesn't mean you got it wrong the first time. It means you made a decision with the information and resources you had available. But in this case, this is one that just went wrong. Because to your point as well, Stephen, it's not even just about risk. It's like, it's time. Like, who has the time to like wildly experiment with big parts of your business. You don't have the time, you don't have the energy, and and to your point, you can't take the risk. So, okay, so this is a perfect example of, remember that trifecta I shared of like consistent process, clear data set, consistent output. So we created this agentic workflow to help us generate proposals. So we offer services in a variety of areas: learning services, implementation services, and kind of scaling and advising strategy services. So you can imagine our proposals are not plug and play, right? They're relatively custom to every client. But at the same time, we had enough volume to be like, maybe, we should be able to create this agentic workflow that will take a call transcript and drop it into a custom GPT that then links to Canva, which then creates this beautiful polished proposal that then queues up an email with the proposal that then we can QA and send along. And it worked. Well, first and foremost, it was a pain to set up. I'm just going to say it. Like, half of the connectors didn't work the way they should have the first time round. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I tried that and it didn't work, you are not alone, because it often doesn't work the first few times. So like, we had to kind of get creative and figure that out. But then the other way, the real kind of long-term not working was that after a while, because the AI space and because us as a company and the needs of our clients are evolving so quickly, our program menu was changing so much that it meant that we had this beautiful proposal generator that was generating proposals that no longer matched our services. And so we were spending like 2/3 of the time and energy we saved to go back and re-edit these things, because we're like, oh, well, that's not called that anymore. Or like, oh, like that recommendation's out of date. We should be doing this. And one of the things that we realized is, we took some time and we're like, okay, we need to create a process to continuously update the proposal generator. And then we realized that given how much we internally at Clarinet, we really value experimentation and ongoing learning. We were like, honestly, let's just instead of focusing our energy and efforts on kind of AI-ifying the proposal generation process, let's focus on AI-ifying something else and just allow, and then we'll go back to kind of doing this more manually, because it allows us to move at the speed we want to move, right? Rather than trying to kind of shoehorn ourselves in to fit this use case. But that was definitely in some way very disappointing, because we were super excited in the very beginning. And then, to be like, we're just not at a place in our business, and we may never be, just because of how much we value just moving fast and evolving our products along with our clients. So yeah.
I think we talked about this when we caught up. We did the exact same thing. We created a proposal bot. It worked great for 2 or 3 weeks. And then every time we would iterate our menu, it would break. And so we sort of just abandoned it. But it's such a great example. And I think it helps people, think of the use cases maybe they tried that ended up not working out after all. Some of the AI debt that they build. And so
Right.
just to, sorry, go on.
Oh no, real quick though, I just want to share the silver lining from this. And I think I shared this with you in the pre-call, and it seemed to resonate, which is one thing that it did do in terms of extracting the learning was to really showcase and unlock the power of transcripts as a data source. And so one of the big things that emerged was a piece of this integration was converting all call transcripts. And we have a default to record culture here at Clarinet. And all call transcripts get turned into Google Docs that sit in a drive to make them very easy to access from all LLMs. And that was literally one sliver of this workflow, but just the convenience of having that transcript kind of at your fingertips or able to be pulled into a workflow was so valuable that that to me is the most used workflow. It is 2 steps, and that emerged because of this thing that we tried to build. So it's also don't be afraid to kind of, when you're looking at it, it's maybe the 5 steps together didn't work, but maybe there were 2 or 3 steps that really did work. And that's what you can lean into and hang on to, and maybe expand and find other areas to apply those things. So yeah, we call those
100%. Yeah. And I want to ask a little bit more about that here in a little bit, just to quickly, I guess, summarize everything that I've heard so far. So good use cases need a trifecta. So you need good data, you need standardized processes, you need a solution that's going to be consistent in the output and frequency. Don't have, fear of jumping in, Fuji. Don't have Fuji. Just try something. You might get it wrong. And you might find that the use case that you thought was going to be the right use case might not be the one. And so I just wanted to quickly recap that. Let's say you're an HR leader and you're listening to the Modern People leader or HR leader or following all your favorite people on LinkedIn, and you're seeing hundreds of use cases. And this guy is, Andrew Golden is building his own engagement platform with Replit. And this person, built out like this crazy workflow. And you feel like, oh crap, like I have to do all of these things. And actually there are, a bunch of good use cases that have this trifecta. Like, how do you prioritize from there? And I know you walked me through this framework. I think it was called the 5 friction framework. So walk me through that real quick. One of my favorite webinars from 2025 was about leave. And this was like a month or two post baby being born. So it was really relevant to me at the time. And we talked about how leave is usually put into 3 buckets. Number 1, the compliance and pay side that you have to get right. Number 2, the business continuity side. So coverage, managers, the return to work plan. And 3, the very real human stuff that's happening at home that shapes how people show up. This couldn't have hit harder for me and Steven. We've both recently added little ones to the family, and it served as a reminder of how complex leave can be, even on a tiny team like ours. Most companies focus almost entirely on that first bucket, but Tilt is built for all 3. Tilt is a leave experience platform that manages all types of leave, from FMLA and PFL to everything in between, with role-based visibility for HR, managers, and employees. They create personalized leave plans so that people know what's happening, what's next, and how they're supported throughout the entire journey. Behind the scenes, Tilt's AI-powered technology automates the admin, keeping everybody aligned, ensuring accurate pay, and turning compliance into a clear, trusted process, so HR teams can focus on the human moments that actually define culture. If you want leave to feel less like spreadsheets and more like clarity and care, check out Tilt at hellotilt.com/MPL. That's hellotilt.com/MPL.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think in this day and age, the issue is not lack of ideas, right? Lack of ideas is not the problem. Yeah, so we have a framework that we call the 5 frictions, and these are essentially from studying high leverage use cases in organizations. These are kind of the buckets they tend to fall into. So the 5 frictions are, one is like AI wins. So what's already working with AI that you could build on? So I think that's one thing that a lot of people underestimate is like, if you're using the same prompt 2 or 3 times, you should be making a GPT, right? If you're following the same steps with your GPT, moving the output from here to here, make it a zap, right? So like and the thing I love about building on AI wins is the ROI is already proven, because you wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't working. So building on AI wins, both individually but also systematically. So that's one of the frictions. By the way, a lot of people are like, but an AI win doesn't sound like a friction. To kind of unpack, the friction is basically, what is the human friction in the process? Like, what is the thing that is holding the people back? And how do we flip it so that it becomes leverage, right? So that's the idea behind the name. The second friction, this is my personal favorite area, which is called work chores. So what are those time-consuming tasks that pull you away from high leverage stuff? Then we have goals. What would make achieving your goal faster and easier? Stretch goals. What goals remain on the backlog perpetually? That's the like, we've always wanted to do X, but we've never had the time. And last is AI native ideas. So this is the idea of, what are some new things that you could do that just were never possible before? For example, how could your existing data, better serve your organization or surface more value, right? So those are the 5 frictions, right? So AI wins, work choice, goals, stretch goals, and AI native ideas. And I realize that's 5 things. If you're like me and you're listening and you're like, I can't remember 5, I'll give you the TLDR. Automate work chores first. Everyone will thank you. You will thank yourself. And the other reason I love work chores is because so often they represent what we call kind of rubber balls in an organization. So in an organization, you often have their glass balls, which are like the really, really precious things where like if you drop it, and you break it, you're in big trouble, right? So this could be PII, right? Like private data. This could be, customer relationships. This could be your platform, right? Those are like the precious things. And then there's the rubber balls, which are like the things where like, if you drop it, yeah, it's a pain, but like you can bounce back from that. So internal comms, a lot of those types of things. And oftentimes work chores fall into the rubber ball camp, which means that you can kind of experiment a little bit more safely, or at least there are aspects of your work chores that are kind of more rubber. And so for those reasons, that's why it's my favorite category, because there's some really rich stuff that you can find in there. And once you crack it, it's all upside.
This is amazing. This is like getting my own personal coaching session for my new role at my company and my job, which I think we've shared it on the show, but this quarter, because like year's too far out, for at least this quarter, probably the next couple, I am shifting from like a co to Daniel on all the things, CEO, COO, say it like all, we were just kind of both doing, very similar things and not overlap though, like strategically as we could. And this year, focusing my energies on being a CTO and chief product officer, with the podcast being the first product I'm working on. And so when I pitched Daniel on this is like right after MPL Live. So like mid-December, right before I went on pat leave. So I was like, I remember pitching Daniel, getting him on board very quickly. He was like, this is a great idea. We definitely should do this. Then he quickly asked me like, all right, well, are we going to do a full process review, like document everything we're doing in the business and then go through this categorization exercise? And I was like, no, we're not going to do that, because I'm pretty sure if we look at content generation being seen as we're a content business, that is just by looking at that, there's going to be a huge unlock. And so that is, I think, one of the, what did you call it? I don't. Yeah. One of the frictions. That was one of the frictions, the one specifically about pick the things, like the one thing you just recommended. So it sounds like I'm on track with, I was on track with that recommendation. Because then I went on pat leave for a month and I was like, oh shit, I hope that was the right move that we've made. And so I want to do something fun. We're starting to run a little short on time, but I want to pick on your work. Like, let's double click a little bit on this and pick one of your clients. Like, we can keep them anonymous. Our audience loves a peek, behind the scenes. And so give us a description of the company, but we can keep the company anonymous, and share with us like the process of going through your 5 friction framework with them, and share with us like some of the things that were uncovered and things that were unlocked. Like, give us a skinny, but like on a real client case study.
All right. Well, here for this, give me a second. Let me pull up some notes. All right. Here we go. Okay, so this client, rapidly scaling startup in the fintech financial services space, global workforce, largely US based, around 800 people and climbing. They have AI as part of their product. Again, one of those companies where you might not immediately think that they would need, quote unquote, need help on AI. Spoiler, about a third of our companies are .ai companies, that a third of our clients are .ai companies. So we're all figuring this out. And we did this kind of, we call it team AIification exercise with one of their, I'll talk about their people function, because that's your working with people. We do it with all functions, but people function. We went through this 5 friction framework. And one of the things that we focused on was, I'm a big fan of saying, look, like, build AI on something, not something on AI. So AI should be linked to the work you're already doing, not net new work in all possible scenarios where that can be true. So for example, one of the first things we did was, I was like, what is a KPI you're trying to move in the next 6 months? And for them, it was time to hire, right? They're scaling rapidly. Time to hire is really, really important to them. And so we went through this and we're like, okay, in light of the goal to move time to hire, what's already working with AI? What are the work chores that, are in and around the idea of time to hire. Goals, stretch goals, AI native ideas. And some of the use cases that emerged that were really exciting, they're actually already starting to implement them, which is very cool. One of them was they realized that one thing that was slowing down time to hire was the hiring managers themselves. Right? So the hiring managers didn't have enough information or were inconsistent. They work very hard on having a very high quality candidate experience. And part of that is getting hiring managers to share feedback with candidates throughout the process. And that was slowing things way, way, way down. And so before we even left the session, we actually created a candidate feedback GPT that hiring managers could use that took the transcript of their interview, and the hiring manager could input a few kind of messy points of feedback, and it would convert it into really high quality candidate feedback that also complied with the legal regulations of like what you are and are not supposed to say in an interview process, and essentially drafted an email that then the hiring manager could send to the recruiting team, and they could send it out to the candidate. And so it took a process that often took like days or weeks of shoulder tapping to get a hiring manager to kind of synthesize this feedback. And it turned it into something that a hiring manager could do within literally minutes of wrapping up their interview. And so that's been a huge win, not only for time to hire, but also for their second key KPI, which is keeping candidate experience really, really high. They have very world-class candidate experience. And so that was one of the things that was also there. So that's an example of like small change, big impact, but it's small change, big impact because they were able to like really zero in on like, what is the issue? What were the work chores, which was like bugging hiring managers and like helping them finesse their feedback. And then how can AI help, right? And in this case, the solve was actually very, very simple, easily accessible within their tech stack. So yeah.
Any other interesting use cases from this client that you're able to share?
Yeah.
It's okay if you're not. This is too anonymous, but
No. That's okay. That's okay. I'm keeping things anonymous because, and I mean, a lot of these use cases, by the way, I mean, as much as you want to link things to your specific goals, there are some things that are more broadly accessible or broadly applicable to most teams doing similar work. So I'll try to pick something that might apply to companies maybe who are not in hypergrowth mode. One of them is, hands up if any of you have ever had an executive who wanted a level of depth of reporting that was a huge pain to compile. So in this case, yes, there we go. Steven's hands are up. And the whole point here is another thing that they were able to do is they were trying to kind of create this like mega dashboard, this kind of mega big report dashboard. Before they did that, we actually did a little AI thing in the moment where I was like, go through and look at like, where are these requests coming from, right? And it turns out, like in most things, there were two execs that were reaching out, and they always had the same questions. And so instead of creating this kind of like big dashboard that like most people wouldn't look at, we actually used AI to create this like hyper personalized dashboard that would just push existing information to essentially these two people in a public channel so other people could look at it, but these two people, and it stopped a lot of the shoulder taps and it made them look a lot more proactive. So that's an example of what AI allows you to do, is kind of to create these almost like hyper personalized experiences for people in an organization without having to do something major. Oh, and I know we're running short on time. There's one more that I'm just remembering.
These are good.
Yeah. Okay. Another one that was really, really cool is, again, for our HR crew, is everyone knows the pain of trying to lure people into your HR systems. So you're trying to get people to go into your HRIS to like log their time off or, review this policy or whatever. You're trying to take them in, go to Confluence and look up our parental leave policy, et cetera. And one thing, and I mean, I know I'm not the first to say this even on this podcast, but just to really underscore how valuable this is. One thing I'm seeing a lot of the really cutting edge, more AI native thinking teams do is essentially bring the tech to the people instead of trying to lure the people to the tech. So for example, if Slack is your primary kind of place where work happens, how can you make it so that you can achieve 90% of what needs to happen via Slack? So, integrating your HRIS so that instead of them having to go to the tool to apply for time off, they can apply for time off within a Slack channel, right? Or, same thing with like the FAQ bot, right? Like hear a lot of people being like, how can I use AI to bring people to Confluence? And I'm like, I'm not trying to diss on Confluence. Confluence actually has a great AI interface called Rovo. But the point is, if people are not in the habit of going to Confluence or any platform, it's often really hard to get them to change their behavior to go there. So in some ways, instead of fighting that upstream battle, how can you flip it and say, I'm going to make it that much easier for you to get the information where you are and where you work? And so I think that's the other piece is, we are often conditioned that like, it is hard, right? Like it's hard. People don't want to go to our tech, et cetera. And this is one thing that AI allows us to do is to actually just like, what if we could remove that barrier entirely? Like, what if we didn't need to have people change their behavior and we could bring kind of the answers and stuff to them? So that's another use case that applies really broadly that I think is phenomenal to benefit both employees, but also the people behind the scenes who have to, do the legwork when your employees refuse to go into your systems. So
we did a webinar recently on how HR teams are actually using AI, and we had people like Brandon Samut on there from Zapier, and we kept coming back to the same idea. AI only matters if it makes insights usable, and that's exactly what ChartHop has built with Ask ChartHop. Instead of having to dig through spreadsheets or click through a maze of filters, you can literally type a question and get the answer that you want instantly. Whether that's org charts, churn risk, hiring timelines, pay equity views, headcount plans, all of that can be generated in seconds. When Steven and I saw this live at HR Tech, we were genuinely blown away. I could totally see this being great for an HR leader who needs quick help to prepare for a board report or has to answer a question that comes up at their next C-suite meeting. Like, what better superpower could a people leader have? And so if you've been looking for something like this and you want to see what it looks like in real life, you can try Ask ChartHop at charthop.com/AI. That's charthop.com/AI. I love these broad use cases. And again, for everybody listening, don't feel like you have to immediately go and build all of these things. Go back, re-listen to this episode, look for the trifecta, go through the 5 friction framework, and I guarantee you're going to find a handful of use cases to start with.
Is there a doc we can link to in our show notes on the 5 frictions?
Good question,
do y'all have?
Steven.
I will happily supply you with an image
awesome.
or a doc or
Send us the
Awesome.
link, the PDF. Maybe a link would be best because I don't know if we can link a PDF in the show notes, but if there's a landing page or something. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to include that. So go grab it in the show notes if you're listening. All right, last thing I wanted to talk about, click cutters. I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I feel like these types of use cases, like the click cutters, are the most game-changing. I think when you shared the idea with me, and I think the example you gave was the workflow of automatically putting transcripts into the appropriate folder. Like, it was like such a like an obvious moment, but I feel like there are probably, a handful of those that at every company. And so re-explain click cutters. How do we find them? Is it just going through the same 5 friction framework? Yeah. Share a little bit more on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think click cutters, it's all about, again, that idea of like slicing your workflow into each of the steps and looking for opportunities to streamline. Sometimes we call this workflow forensics, of like going through and parsing out like literally what is like the click, copy, paste that's going on. And so honestly, you could go through 5 frictions. As I said, work chores are rife with click cutters because often the thing that makes something a chore is the fact that you don't even have to think about it much. So you're kind of like, click. But what I would say is so much of it is just like, it's just kind of turning that lens on, right? Of saying like, let me notice not just what the work is, but exactly how I'm going about it. And once you kind of activate that lens, then you start to find opportunities to cut clicks everywhere, right? So the idea of like the transcript to Google Drive generator, that came about. Yes, it was part of our proposal workflow, but it also came about because I was like, wow, after every single workshop, I'm like copying and pasting this into a Google Doc so that I can upload it to, Claude or whatever. And I was like, I'm doing that like 6 times a day, And so some of it is also just like, notice what's irritating you. Like, because one of the things that I really like about click cutting is it's not just about time savings, it's cognitive energy. Because every little click, every time you have to like open up a new tab to do something, that's cognitive friction that's slowing you down and keeping you from wanting to do it. And so I think that's the other thing is you can also flip it and just be like, what would make this process 5% more delightful for me? Like, what would make this process 5% less dreadful? And that can also help you identify what are those like little wins that then really truly compound over time. Right? Like this is click cutters, I would say, are like the compounding interest of AI.
Everyone has to want some compounding interest of AI.
Exactly.
So I love it. I love it. Well, with that, we've officially, Diane, reached the point in the conversation where we have to turn a corner and bring this to an end. We could probably go on for another hour just talking about this stuff. So thanks already for everything that you've shared. A couple more traditions that we need to get through before you're off the hook. The next one's what we call rapid fire questions. Same questions we ask every guest. You ready to do this?
Oh, yes.
All right. First question. What's one piece of advice you've given to someone starting in HR today?
Understand people's frictions. If you can understand what frustrates them, then you can understand so much about a business and the humans in it.
So true. I feel like you're going to have a good one for this next question. If you could steal one strategy from another company, what would it be?
This is, there's strategy, tactic, etc. But there's one of our clients that we're working with, which they're great. They're household name, although I'm under NDA, so I can't say anything yet. But they're doing an AI week. And it's a whole week of programming and like build-a-thons, and they're bringing people together and so on. And like, it just sounds like a dream because it's, like they're not stopping the business to do this, but it's just a level of like really kind of investment in their people to bring them along this journey, which I think is just fabulous. And so now I'm like, on the inside of Clarinet, I was like, we should have an AI week. Like, even though we do AI every day, like that idea of almost like having that
every day.
Yeah, it's like it is, but it isn't, right? Like where you're truly where the focus is just on what do we need at this moment? How do we get going? Like how do we like catalyze that momentum? So that's the one that I would recommend to everyone is like AI week to just like get some stuff done, right? Get some stuff off your plate, get some wins going. I'm so inspired by this particular client.
The best brands that Daniel and I admire that are pushing the envelope on like innovation in this kind of new AI economy, HR wise, they have all invested a material amount of time at the company, whether it was a week or less time over a month or a series of activations to get those AI kind of creative juices flowing. Like I can't think of one where it just happened organically. I don't know, maybe one of the AI companies that we've interviewed because that's like what they do. But last question, who do we need to have on the show next? Like if there's someone an HR leader that you think is just really doing incredible work and deserves a spotlight, who would that be?
Ooh, I have a name, but I want to make sure I'm getting. So her name is Victoria Reimers, and she is head of people at Juniper Square. And she has been just like a true pioneer in the AI space in terms of just like internal operation. And I just love, like she is the one who inspired, genuinely partially inspired our 2026 strategy when she came to me one day and was like, these ideas are great, but who's going to build our agents? And I was like, that's the question we're all going to be needing an answer to in 2026. Who's going to build our agents? So like, she just has like a knack for just like cutting at the heart of both the frictions and the leverage when it comes to the intersection of human and AI as a real operator herself. So shout out to you, Victoria.
Is it Victoria or Victoria?
Victoria, yeah. I'll send you a link to her And
All right, one word or phrase close is how we wrap up every episode. Could be one word, it could be a few, whatever's coming to mind for you as we say our goodbyes and we're finishing up this episode.
leave it all on the field.
Ooh,
Hey,
love that
I love
callback.
I'll go next. I'm gonna go with Daniel was right, because Daniel told me I was gonna love this conversation with you, Diane. So many different things that I love, the conversation itself, but like I'm a big fan of Life Labs learning, and so just that you were had the positions that you had over there, like it's just been a lot of fun today. So Daniel was right.
Glad.
I'm gonna say find those frictions. If I don't even know if you can pluralize that, but yeah, find the friction points. That's gonna be my biggest takeaway from this. I feel like maybe it's worth the MPL going through the 5 friction framework.
Why do you think I asked for the PDF? It wasn't just for the
Like,
audience.
it's not for the audience.
I said this
Like,
was a personal coaching session,
like, it's
so
for me.
here we are. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. You probably will link this in the show notes, but if anyone wants to learn more about Clarinet, we're Clarinet, like the instrument, clarinet.io, and we would love to hear from y'all.
Amazing.
Yeah, go reach out to Clarinet. And before we hit stop and say goodbye, do you ever listen to there's this show called Armchair Expert, and at the end they do all of the corrections where if they said anything that was incorrect on the episode, they list them all out. And I can't stop cringing at myself for saying Fuji instead of, is it Fuji? I still can't figure it out.
But fear of jumping in. So, you could, it depends on how you spell of, Daniel.
I don't know.
It's not. UF? It's like FOMO. Rhymes with FOMO.
Yeah,
FOMO.
FOMO.
God.
We got all kinds of them.
I was literally laughing at myself in the middle of the episode for saying that.
Oh my God.
Well, Diane, this was so great. Thank you again. And have a good rest of your week.
Thank you. Y'all too.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.